Welcome to my first ever video review. For this review we're going to be doing Towers and Powers VR. So aptly named because you place towers and they have different powers. And yeah, anyway, we'll get into it. Well, while I'm not normally a fan of tower defense games, I thought I'd give this game a shot. Recently having purchased a VR headset, I really want to try and get more into VR gaming. First thing I want to talk about is the visuals. While the game isn't exactly ugly, it has quite a pleasant aesthetic, quite cartoony, might be a bit colourful to some, but I quite enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the way they have the figurines on the sleeve when you summon them, so they'll come up as little 2D sprites. This just really pops in a 3D world, and honestly, more games should do this. Speaking of summoning the different creatures, this is where the game feels lackluster. Putting down the different summons are supposed to be able to build different towers, but honestly that doesn't feel super rewarding in any way. Different towers being built in different ways still makes them feel the same, honestly. The biggest problem is that you just kind of watch the game unfurl. You don't feel active in doing anything. I suppose this is my biggest problem with tower defense games, is that you really don't feel like you have much to do, but this game really did fail in that scenario. When you're in a VR headset, you kind of want to have lots of different things going on. You don't want to sit there bored just watching things unfurl, which unfortunately this game really did have that problem with. Later in the game you do eventually get to do things like grabbing a cannonball and throwing them on top of enemy units, but even then that's too few and far between. Speaking of the enemies, they're really quite Speaking of the enemies, they really are quite few and far between in terms of variety. They all look the same, more or less move the same, with some of them just being bigger than others. Next thing I want to talk about is the actual VR immersion. Now, when it comes to VR and tower defense, I don't think the two really mix very well. While I was playing the game, I really did feel quite bored throughout the duration of it, just because it didn't feel like you were doing much. The story was pretty much non-existent, and for the entire time, you're just pointing and clicking and moving things, as opposed to actually grabbing them physically with your hand, which would have felt nice. Being able to actually pick up the creatures and see them struggle about like they're a me or something would have been a pretty nice feature, but no, alas, you're just pointing, clicking, moving elements. And that for me just felt like I was completely out of the whole experience. As I've already mentioned, the whole experience for me just felt overall quite boring and like there wasn't much to it. Although it was pretty to look at, that wasn't enough for me, so I give it a 4 out of 10. My books. But then, if you're a fan of tower defense games, would I recommend giving it a look on sale? Probably. It wasn't that bad. Maybe there's more to it in the late game. For the 2 hours I spent with it, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who doesn't like tower defense games and just wants an interesting VR experience. There's better experiences out there. Well, thank you for watching. Catch me next time on the Bloody Boy channel. Yee!